on the exchanges, and I don't know if that's the paper price, but the trading price, as far as I understand, is $92, and that's a lot of money. That's more than $72. A lot more than $72. They wanted the price to go down, and it's not going down, and that's super interesting. Moving forward with the challenge of the 2024 BC election result, phase 3 is live, and there's a link later on in the show in the government section. I hope we get there in the free show. I think that we will, but maybe not. I don't know. So we're going to have to talk about that. But the remanded has kept on it. He's raised phase 1 and phase 2 successfully, and they're into phase 3 now. So, man, they're moving forward with this, and hopefully people are held accountable. Hopefully, fingers crossed, right? Things were done improperly, and they admit that. So wild and crazy times there. Non-culpable homicide in Calgary. A lady was being attacked by a man, and she killed him, and the police didn't arrest her. And that is interesting because in the past, the person who defends themselves was held accountable for defending themselves, not in this case. So I'll go over that. That's good news. This is in Calgary as well. I'm not sure if I said that. Mandatory digital ID scrapped in the United Kingdom because of the backlash. They were going to force babies to have a digital ID attached to them. And everybody said, the heck you say? And the UK backed down, I guess, for now. Anyway, Greenland is moving forward, it seems. Somebody asks Donald Trump, the premier of Greenland would like to stay with Denmark. He said, well, that's going to be a problem for him. So I think it's pretty funny. USMCA is not needed by the United States, says Donald Trump. And so Mark Carney has not even been asked about it. And that's weird because you would think the press would be all over that, asking about that, because that's a pretty substantial thing coming up July 1st. And that's going to be here sooner than you think. My birthday is the day before. So I hope everything's nice and smooth on July 1st. I don't want to be stressed out about anything. And if the USMCA is ended, I wonder, like, what does the trade look like? 25% or more or worse? Or, man, like all sorts of stuff is just up in the air, and that's not so good. So I don't like any of that. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Mario says, breaking, Donald Trump just announced that the U.S. doesn't need the USMCA, also known as the CUSMA, C-U-S-M-A, which is just silly. Carney took too long to negotiate. Now Trump doesn't care for it. Canada, you bet on the wrong horse. Carney was never the right man for the job. Now we pay the price. Our elections are rigged. Carney was parachuted in. The results of a rigged election shouldn't stand, really, but here we are with Carney as the prime minister. We're victims. Canadians are victims of a rigged election that has not been fixed. We didn't vote for this, and we don't deserve any of the things that are happening right now. We are victims, and people shouldn't be. One of the things they do is, oh, those stupid liberals, oh, those stupid conservatives, blah, blah, blah. It's a wedge to divide us. We should be united in the fact that our government is not doing basic things that it should be doing for the well-being of the country and the well-being of its citizens. Instead, it's sending billions to Ukraine. I think that the government are criminals, and we should be addressing that. And instead, we're being wedged, and people are encouraging people to blame the other team when really we should all be on the same team against the globalist nutjobs who have taken over our country. Trump says the USMCA is irrelevant for the United States, according to U.S. News. Which one? A World Report, U.S. News. I don't know which. Reuters. There it is. So Reuters is reporting. Interesting. Here's Trump saying it in Michigan yesterday, I think. Farm Girl Carrie says, we don't need cars made in Canada. We want to make them here.
We don't need cars made in Canada. We don't need cars made in Mexico. We want to make them here. And that's what's happening. Everybody's moving here. From Canada, they're coming here. From Mexico, from Japan, from Germany, from all over the world, they're coming here.
Yep. And Mercedes, I reported the other day, oh no, they're going to Hungary, but they're leaving the United Kingdom, right? So I think it's the United Kingdom. So wild. People are leaving places that have anti-business taxation laws and moving to places where they can actually get things done. And right now, that's Trump's United States. With Biden in, I don't think you could get anything done. It was just like Canada. So the United States is open to that attack, right? Open to having a Manchurian candidate come in and tank your businesses. Look at Obama, right? And so a lot of people think Obama wasn't so bad, but Obama was pretty bad. And the economy was pretty bad under him, and they faked it. And they did Fast and Furious. There's a whole bunch of stuff that Obama did that he got away with because the press was very, very agreeable to all of the things he was doing. I saw a news article, and I didn't tag it, but Biden was being hammered by the press at 6 points, or no, they were saying, oh, Biden's inflation is cooling from 6.7 down to 6.2. Like, chill out, guys. The inflation's going down. And Trump was hammered for 2.7% inflation. And I don't even think it's that high in the United States, because Trump is acting to reduce it. And so the press has an impact on people's perception, even if the reality is vastly different than what the perception the press wants to push. They don't care. They'll just lie and have the same tonality as if something egregious has happened, even though it's way better than the last guy or whatever. So very interesting. CTV News is reporting China urges Canada to break from the United States influence as Prime Minister Carney visits Beijing. Well, I mean, without saying anything, China got liberal MPs to leave Taiwan. So that's something, right? That's interesting. And so now the suggestion from China to break ties with our biggest trading partner. How much trade goes through the United States? Something like 75% or something like that, maybe even more. Break ties with the United States? Oh, okay, China, that sounds super good. We'll do that. We'll get right on that. Unbelievable. And that's what Mark Carney is advocating for, though. That's what he wants. That's why he's in China. Tokyo Rosie says, I wonder how long the United States will tolerate a satellite state of China along the northern border, because that's exactly where Carney is taking us. Trying to, anyway. Mario says liberals campaigned on 51st state and Trump, the fear of those things, not realizing that Carney is setting us up as a vassal state of China. If you think Trump is concerned about Taiwan, wait and see what happens when China starts investing in Canada's oil and critical minerals. Yeah, there's big problems, because Trump has said very clearly, we're not going to let China or Russia own Greenland. So I don't think they can let China own Canada. And yet we are owned by Canada right now. I saw somebody yesterday saying, if we have to pick, like gun to our heads, we have to pick no more Canada. You can either be Canada as a province of China, or Canada as a vassal of the United States, like Guam, or maybe a 51st state, if we're lucky, get voting rights and maybe a par currency. But gun to your head, which one do you choose? And the person was saying, like, I choose the United States. I know which one I would choose. I know which one I would choose as well. But there are an uncomfortably high number of people who are saying, oh yeah, China's fine. We'd love China. It's like, well, sure. I guess they have some advanced technology and there's some things that they do well, but there's also massive human rights abuses and genocide and like all sorts of terrible things. And I mean, I guess Canada too, if you listen to the mainstream media, but I think China genuinely engages in those things where Canada, it's just been a manufactured bullshit way to browbeat us and shame us about our history. I digress. Here's Doug Ford, and he says, we can't undermine Canadian workers by flooding our market with cheap made-in-China electric vehicles. To protect Canadian jobs, the federal government needs to maintain its 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. We can't bring in cheap Chinese vehicles because we hate giving the option of cheap Chinese vehicles to our citizens. Would it undercut the American and Canadian auto markets? Probably. Would it piss Trump off? Definitely. Absolutely. The tariff, the 100% tariff, was not put in isolation. It was put in at the behest of Trump. I explained this yesterday. And there shouldn't be any way that this tariff gets removed, even with the soybeans and all the rest. And people were calling soybeans and canola oil and all that. People were calling for Canada to remove the EV tariff in order to sell that stuff to China. And I don't think that's the right move, because again, we have to keep the United States happy to a certain degree. Here's Doug Ford for 15 seconds talking about the EVs in Ontario.
When you have the Chinese government wanting to dump cheap Chinese parts and cheap vehicles here, it costs the Canadian and American jobs. So I'm absolutely 100% dead against this. When you have the Chinese...
So he's against it, and I don't even see how it's entering the conversation. When Trump finds out, it's going to end, like the conversation's going to end. The other aspect of this is the mentality of Doug Ford. Competition's bad. Having cheap competition is bad. I mean, the implications of having Chinese EVs allowed into the open market in Canada and what the United States would do if we did that, that's enough for me to say we should not do this. But also the mentality of we can't allow these cheap goods in here because people might buy those cheap goods. That's bad, because people should have options of the $3,000 car. Like when I was growing up, you could get a car for $3,000. It was a winter beater, but it mostly worked. The heating maybe didn't work, or the air conditioning maybe didn't work, or the radio maybe didn't work, but all sorts of other parts worked, right? Like, TD Leaker says, do you know this is their mentality? Breaking, Canada announces bold new affordability plan, double the price of the cheapest cars on earth, so interns learn resilience and jobs feel protected. Nothing says protect Canadian workers like forcing Canadian workers to pay luxury prices for basic transportation, competitive nation stuff. We can't let Canadians buy affordable EVs. That would undermine Canadian jobs, so we'll undermine Canadians instead. Canada cost of living is out of control. Also Canada, let's add 100% tariffs to the category that could actually get cheaper. Protecting Canadian jobs by making mobility a privilege, because if there's one thing a high-cost country needs, it's higher costs. So yes, doing everything they can to not allow the competition seems counterintuitive, but there's more context. Melissa says, just to remind you that China is a strong partner with both Russia and Iran. How does it make sense for Canada to form a stronger partnership with China, therefore indirectly contradicting Canada's support for Ukraine against Russia and the freedom of the people of Iran? There you go. Trump derangement syndrome, she says, TDS. So, yep, maybe. So it is mental gymnastics. Don't even cover it. Lee is responding to Juno News. Juno News says President Trump has bluntly dismissed the upcoming trade talks with Canada, declaring that America holds all the leverage and doesn't need whatever Canada will be bringing to the table. And Lee points out all of our leverage has evaporated in the last, just after Christmas to now. Our two biggest areas of leverage were heavy crude oil and potash. That leverage is badly diminished now. In mid-December, the Trump administration completed a deal that freed 125 political prisoners held in Belarus. In exchange, the U.S. lifted sanctions on potash exports. Belarus can immediately replace roughly 60% of the potash Canada exports to the U.S., meaning within 5 years between Belarus potash exports and increased U.S. production, they won't need any Canadian potash. On the heavy crude front, Trump told Trudeau in November that he wanted Keystone XL revived immediately. He signed the appropriate executive order on January 20th, approving the cross-border peace that Biden canceled. He reiterated the point to Carney. When Carney didn't include Keystone in his major project list, the die was cast. Within a year, Venezuela can increase their output of heavy crude by 50%. Within 3 years, they can replace every barrel coming from Alberta. Maybe. I'm cagey on that. I don't know that that's actually true. But if the United States stabilizes Venezuela and the oil flows and Venezuela gets rich and everybody's happy, I could see it as very, very plausible. Because you don't think to yourself a dictator is going to take over that place, because that place is protected by the United States, unlike Canada. Damn it. We were given multiple opportunities to become part of an even more integrated North America, but our Trump derangement syndrome infected leaders cheered on by our media along with a majority of our citizens. I don't know a majority. I don't know if a majority know what's going on, but it's a manufactured majority. There's money going around where if you say something, some pink-haired Karen will come up and browbeat you about it. So you just stay quiet. But I think a lot of citizens are not on board with this Carney bullshit. Anyway, media along with the citizens bought into the Elbows Up campaign. It was just an excuse to say, oh yeah, this is why he won. So Trump moved on from jokes and insults to ignoring us and replacing us. His economy is on fire. Ours is heading in the opposite direction. And Carney is en route to China while trying his newly acquired Chinese-made knee pads. Hope the country he called the greatest threat to Canada can save his ass. Well, I mean, who cares? Like, Carney's sold us out, so... Canada's not okay with the supposed annexation of Greenland from the United States, but we are okay to do trade deals with China, who threatens to annex Taiwan. Weird. Super weird, right? All of the strange things that happen in Canadian politics, and it feels like the mental gymnastics are there to cover for the contradictions and the hypocrisy that is baked into the Liberal position. Jason Levine is responding to a whole bunch of venues have said, oh, we don't want these separatists here. Quebec separatists, they're not treasonous. They're just political, right? Quebec separatism is just fine. Alberta separatism is treason. Weird. Super weird about that. I think that's weird, right? So Freedom Honey says the anti-independence movement is getting desperate to try and stop the democratic process. They're harassing venues, hosting referendum petition events. The battle continues. So this is Wendy. She says, just in case anyone wants to question some of these businesses, I want to know why the Kingsway Legion stopped signature taking for Forever Canadian, but the Castor Legion is allowing the separatists to spout their lies there and gather petition signatures. So it's a very, the positioning is very, very aggressive and hateful towards anybody who's trying to have a separate Alberta, and they're pressuring places. The Canadian Brew House has canceled events, and so they've changed venues. Jason Levine says, I'm flattered that they're trying so hard to cancel our events. It won't work. We have new locations and more to come. Hopefully Elections Alberta are paying attention to this interference, as fines can reach $50,000. Nobody will be fined. Nobody will be fined. Spoiler alert. Sorry, everyone. I hope I'm wrong. Keith says, is the memo of understanding effectively dead? Carney confirmed today that he's treating First Nations consent as a veto over the pipeline. First Nations have now stated again that they do not consent, meaning, in Carney's view, no pipeline. That position is unconstitutional. Section 35 does not grant a veto to First Nations and never has. Courts have been clear. The Crown has a duty to consult and accommodate, not to surrender decision-making authority. Interprovincial pipelines fall under exclusive federal jurisdiction. By ignoring the Constitution, Carney is inflicting serious economic harm on Alberta. Once again, his actions strengthen the case for Alberta independence, so Alberta can negotiate as an equal with BC on reciprocal trade and access. No free passage for BC if Alberta goods and resources are blocked. So if you're blocking access, we'll block access. You can't travel through our territory if you don't let us travel through yours. YEG wave, and that's interesting, right? All of that's very, very interesting. And so we'll see. And I've got Mark Carney going to speak with the Potemkin village of First Nations, because they're not First Nations, they're just paid. So you might as well have just hired actors. It's weird. Here's YEG Wave, and they say a Calgary woman is recovering after being lured to a northwest Calgary home where a violent encounter left a 48-year-old man dead in what police are calling a clear-cut case of self-defense. Police say Shabazz Ahmad lured the woman in her 30s to a home in Edgemont on January 9th under the pretense of a property showing. The woman was at the residence with her father, but they became separated inside the large house when Ahmed attacked her without provocation. She managed to fight him off and escape, alerting neighbors who called 911. Ahmed was found in medical distress and pronounced dead at the scene, while the woman was treated in hospital for injuries and is in stable condition. Canada Police Homicide Acting Staff Sergeant Scott Gutterson said the woman did everything right and acted entirely in self-defense. The death has been ruled a non-culpable homicide and no charges will be laid. Ahmed was known to police, had faced previous criminal charges, including assault with a weapon and threats, but was acquitted in all cases last year. So, wow. I'm curious if she carried a weapon with her or if she used some weapon of convenience to kill her attacker, or perhaps she used no weapon at all. Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah, like, very interesting. Usually 30-year-old women and 48-year-old men, the man would easily overpower the woman. So I'm interested in how this woman killed this man completely in self-defense. Good job. And I'm glad that there's no, it seemed like in Canada, if something like this happened, that the person who committed the murder, regardless of whether it was in self-defense or not, would be taken in by police. But that looks to be not the case in this situation, and that's good. I wonder if the attacker's previous relationship with police and recent court appearance plays into this. I'm wondering the why of this, and yeah, I'm wondering how she was able to subdue her attacker. Maybe she punched him in the chest and he had a heart issue or something like that. Like maybe there's something else that went on or something like that. Because like stabbing somebody and running away, maybe she did stab me. I did hear somebody messaged me and said, I'm wondering what you think about the person who stabbed her attacker and is not under arrest. And I was like, ooh, I wonder when I'll come across that story. And it didn't take long. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe she stabbed him. Maybe they were in the kitchen. I don't know. I have no idea. But the important part is that the person who defended themselves with deadly force was not arrested. A win for common sense or something in Canada. Scott says, Prime Minister Carney ahead of his meeting with Coastal First Nations. Coastal First Nations is not actually a First Nations anything. They're paid by the government and they're a think tank, I think. They're not what he's claiming they are. In this minute and 10 second long clip, it is long and it is boring. There have been minute long clips where I felt like the minute just flies by and it's so quick it's gone. And this one, after 20 seconds, you're snoring. I'm snoring. But I just wanted to show you that Mark Carney has not cleaned up his speech. Whatever has happened to his speech happens in certain situations, but when he's freewheeling, he defaults right back to the ums and the ahs. It's really, really strange. I don't care really what he's talking about going to see the First Nations people, and he's talking about how it's about dialogue, blah, blah, blah. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. I'm just showing you how ineffective a speaker he is. Somebody was saying to me on the comments in one of the other videos, when I speak about my job, I sound intelligent, or I sound like I have command of what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. When Mark Carney speaks about anything, he does not sound like that. He sounds like he's making shit up.
Important time for our country. You know, it's a decisive moment for Canada, and I'm very focused on not just building, but how we build and how we build together. So today is really about a dialogue. It's a dialogue of what's been happening in the region, the projects that have been led by the various First Nations here, the various opportunities that do exist, the imperative of conservation, how we have been doing on conservation in this immense, precious natural heritage, which is a huge responsibility for all of us, but is core to the identity of the First Nations here. So how we work together to preserve that, to enhance it, well, we're looking for opportunities for development. So today's not a day for big announcements. It is a day, as I say, for dialogue, for listening and working. There will be a time for coming back with progress, particularly with respect to conservation.
I think he thinks it makes him sound magnanimous or something. Makes him sound, you know, you have a professor who's standing there and he's trying to find the right word. Even that, he wouldn't be standing there muttering, come on. I digress. Mark Carney is a bad leader, in my opinion. Here's the remanded, and he's talking about moving to the next phase of this. We have to say goodbye to the stream as well. I'll be saying goodbye to the stream after this, but do go and share your support. I hope that they're able to make the third phase of this. They've been able to make the other two phases so far, which is great. Skin of their teeth kind of stuff, close. And people have come in and said, you know, I'll give $5,000 if you're close to making it. I'll give $5,000. And so that's good. Remanded says, confirmation, the initiative is proceeding. Today, we will serve the Chief Electoral Officer of Elections BC and provide notice to the Attorney General of British Columbia regarding our petition for judicial review before the BC Supreme Court. People talk about solutions. All I'm doing is taking a chance at just that. I will be launching phase 3 shortly this week. Take note of who the bad faith actors are. We keep going. And he says, a big thank you to the Canadian and British Columbia public for supporting me in this endeavor. I never imagined I would be leading an initiative of this magnitude on election integrity. And so phase 3 is now up. If you're interested, there's the Give, Send, Go. Link is in the description. So yeah, wonderful work by the remanded. He's gone above and beyond, spent a lot of his own money to do this. And he's got a little team as well who's also contributed, and a bunch of people who've donated. So I hope they're successful. And man, the courts are rigged, man. So I hope that they're successful. I hope that they have success in this. I hope that they're able to shine a light on this. I hope that they get some satisfaction from this process. Fingers crossed. With that,